I'd love to speak for a lot longer, but I haven't really got much time tonight, so I'm going to now move on to my story. I felt that it was really important to explain what sacred sexual consciousness was before I started to share my story. So I was born here in Solihull. I was born into a Catholic family, and I was brought up living my mother's life. I had to do everything my mum wanted. I had to play the violin, go to ballet, and do everything that she wanted. And I kind of got a belief then that to be loved, I couldn't be me. I also wasn't allowed any animals or brother or sister, anybody to share or give love to or have love with. And I was also made to feel bad about even wanting, oh, you want a disgusting animal in the house. And so I was a bit confused and shut down from a very, very young age. I was also, like I said, brought up in a Catholic family where I was constantly told that I was full of sin and evil and needed to go and repent of that. On top of that, my father actually trained to be a Catholic priest, so luckily he didn't carry on. He came out and met my mom, but he had such strong views around sexuality, and if he ever saw somebody kissing or any sexual activity on the television or on holiday, if they were in the streets kissing, he would be going, ugh, disgusting, ugh, ugh. And I would be like really confused, because as then I started to develop as a woman, I started to feel sexual energy, and it felt really nice. But yet everybody was telling me that it was evil and wrong and bad and disgusting. And so I had big conflict. I couldn't speak to anybody about this. I couldn't speak to my parents, certainly, about sex. So all the education I had was from older girls and, people around me that really they were all fear-based educated sex. There was no love or relationship or honour or anything like that put into it. I was in a truth circle when I was 13, and all the older girls had said that they'd lost their virginity. And I was the only one that hadn't. And I was like, oh, the pressure was on. And so I said to the guy, it was a slightly older guy that I was seeing, I said, okay, it's time. Anyway, I got myself into a horrible situation and I was raped at 13. And then I found out that everybody in the truth circle hadn't lost their virginity. So I was betrayed by all my girlfriends, and I was betrayed by this man. And later somebody else took him to court for rape, and everybody condemned the woman. I knew she was telling the truth, but I didn't say anything about it. I couldn't talk about this experience to my parents. I took it all on that it was my fault and I was bad and I was wrong. And so that started to set me up of having a low self-worth and a negative feeling about myself. And it got me into more and more situations where I kind of took on a belief that men only wanted me for sex. So then I got into situations where I'd give myself, I didn't really want to, but I did. And then I was called a slag and all these horrible names, and not just from men, but other teenagers, but from the other girls. And that's why that YouTube video got me the other week about the slut shaming, because if I'd have had the wisdom that I had now about sexuality, I wouldn't have had so much shame. But then I wouldn't have got into negative sexual things. But anyway, so I started drinking alcohol quite heavily about 13, 14, end of 13, 14. There was many nights where my parents had to come and pick me up off the floor in the park. I hated myself, really. Started taking drugs when I was about 15, started partying harder. I loved the raves though, took lots of ecstasy, But that made my heart open, and I just go around the room telling everybody I love them, and it was just great. It has a great effect on your heart chakra. But of course then I wanted to make love to people as well, so then I'd end up with some men and then, you know, be condemned for that afterwards and feel bad. But that's another thing, I feel that, you know, people drink alcohol and take what I call social lubricants just to do things that they actually probably want to do anyway, you know, but it just gives them permission. Everybody really is just looking for that loving connection. They're looking for love. And that's what I was doing, I was looking for love. But the self-hatred was getting stronger, the drugs were getting worse, the relationships I was getting into were just getting horrendous. Physically abusive relationships, being controlled and being told I was a slag, nobody else would look at me. You know, I'm better staying with them because nobody else would fucking have you. Went out with, you know, bad lads after bad lads, drug dealers, the worst possible people that could treat me the worst way possible. I was there. And of course it was just this downward and downward cycle. And at age 22, I had a big rejection from a guy that I was seeing. I was sacked from my job. I hated myself, and I hit heroin. I started taking it, and it was just like I was wrapped in cotton wool. Heroin's kind of like the energy of being held. That's why people take it, because it's just like you're loved. There's no problems. It's the biggest painkiller in the world. So, you know, that's people don't take it because they're stupid. It's because they're in fucking shitloads of pain. And so I thought, I won't get addicted, I can control this. And at first it motivates you, so you kind of get loads of things done, and then before you know it, it's under your skin and you're like needing it every day. I worked, luckily, to fund my habit through most of my heroin addiction. And by the end of my time on heroin, I was doing about £240 worth of drugs a day. And I would beg, rob and steal and lie, because I would do anything to get that drug, anything. And then it got to the point where my mum was going to chuck me out of the house. I had nothing. They didn't live, they'd fucked off to America. They couldn't cope with me. So I was on my own, but in their house. And they said that they'd had enough, and I was out the house. So I had a choice to either clean up or become a drug dealer's whore. So I cleaned up. And that was 12 years ago, next month. And what happened was I went to see an acupuncturist, and I said, I'm Larissa and I'm a heroin addict and need some help. And he was the first person that helped me realise that I wasn't evil, that I'd been doing certain things because I didn't have any choice. I'd reacted energetically to my parents because of the way that they'd been reacting to me. They were both kind of workaholics, so they were always away doing things, and I was just so lonely. And he was also into energy healing. And so I started learning energy healing because it was such a it had helped me so much, and I wanted to learn more about how we worked, not just on a physical level, but you know, there was more to us. And that's when I started doing this Barbara Brennan energy healing course, and that's when I started to get some of my gifts. I was starting to feel energies around me. Things were opening up. I could tell what people's emotions were, and all different things were kind of happening. I still wasn't in the greatest of relationships, because I still had a lot of baggage, a lot of crap with me. I still hated myself at quite a lot of levels. But over the years, then I kept learning lots of different techniques, energetic techniques for healing. I did radionics, which is another energy technique. I did EIP, which is eliminating interference held in your DNA. I did reflexology, aromatherapy. I've done several different types of massage. I've always been searching. I've gone on different courses to try and, you know, find out who I was and what was going on, and to connect to more of, you know. But I was still in a lot of pain. And I couldn't really understand it. I knew I was doing all the right things going to all these courses. And a lot of the teachings I was learning, I could feel, because I could feel energy, I could feel that they were right. But I still was feeling like shit. And I wanted to give up so many times. There were so many times where I just thought, no, there's no point. I'm doing all the right things, I'm still feeling bad, I'm not getting good relationships. What's the point? What is the point? But something kept me going. Yeah, I was getting all these pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but they weren't quite fitting together. Quite early on in my journey though, I did a powerful meditation, and during this meditation I was visited by the goddess Isis, and I was kind of told at that point that I was working with her energy. I didn't know who the hell the goddess Isis was, and she's an Egyptian goddess who actually brought her husband back to life using sacred sexual energy when he was killed by his brother. And a lot of the priestesses of Isis used sacred sexual power, sacred sexual energy to heal in the communities. And you know, often any soldiers that were brought back to war were brought to the temples for cleansing. The priestesses would take all that negative war energy out of them, and so that they could go back to their families and their homes without any hatred energy. So I sort of studied a little bit about Isis, but I didn't really think that I was going to actually fully step into her energies. But